So we're here to solve this cross the streams LITS by Bryce. One thing you can do at the start in all these puzzles is look for clues that use most of the cells. This looks like it uses at least 9 with 1, 1, and then 5. 1, 2, and 4 also uses 9. 2, 1, 5 uses all 10, so let's actually shade that right away. Six, 1 uses 8, and 7, 1 also looks like it uses 8. So what we can do is, for the larger side numbers, this 5 clue has to use at least these 3 cells. This is where the 2 could sit. The 2 could sit all the way here, but coming back 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and the 3 are shared. Similarly, the 6, 1 cell used here, unused. This would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So it has to start at least there. If the 6 started all the way at the end, it would go all the way out to here. So we get 4 used cells. We can mark a little bit in the vertical because of this one to mark this cell unused. The first break-in for the puzzle really comes from recognizing we have a row and column clue which are fairly constrained. They actually both start with a 1. If that were this cell being shaded, it would then have 2 unused cells right next to it. It would isolate that bit, and a cross the streams puzzle needs a single shaded region. So this is a corner where that's just not possible. Another way actually a corner can be impossible is if you have 2 2s together. 2 2s would look like this, but there'd be no extension beyond the 2, and we'd actually have a 2 by 2 rule laid out. So something to watch for in the puzzles is when you have these clues that lead to instant contradiction. What that actually lets us do is shade fully the column and row clues for column 1 and row 1, because these 9 cell clues end up not being able to use their first cell. So we'll start by just marking what the shaded rules force. We'll then look at the adjacent pieces. This column forces these to be shaded. I'm going to mark the tetromino shapes as soon as I know them. And I'm going to even mark the pieces of tetromino as soon as I know them. So these 3 cells will connect to either an L or an I. We can see by connectivity that these come together. This comes out. We have an unknown cell over here. We don't actually know if this comes down here or this comes down like here, but in both cases the cell gets shaded, so I'll just mark that in now. Down in this bottom section, we had the 2, 1 forming a T shape. This first cell being shaded marks the start of the 6 clue. We actually have a 2 by 2 square to avoid there. So we have this. These 2 cells come out. They're going to have to take this cell. If not, you'd have 2 tetrominos that come like this. Now you should recognize taking this cell would put an L near another L. That's not going to be allowed, so this gets used. The most critical piece, and this is the second and maybe hardest step of the puzzle, let me just shade a little more fully here, is looking at this vertical clue. We've filled in this question mark. It's equal to the 1 at the bottom. This is going to be a vertical 2. What it actually means is that either below or above there's going to be a cancellation, and that means critically, if you think about connectivity, you can't get through this channel. So these shaded bits in this lower left segment have to get out. They can't get out this way. There's only one more way out, and that's this way. So at the very start you can shade these 2 cells. This gets unused. With these being shaded as unused, this 4 at the bottom now becomes very quickly forced, like this. Now come back to this connectivity thinking this lower left piece had to come out here to get out. We still can't get through this section, and so now there's only one isolated way to get back to the upper left of this grid, and that's through these cells. And so we'll shade those in. Now we have 1, 2, 1. The top of this has to be a 2, so these get shaded. If you look ahead a bit, if you shade this cell, both of these cells get unmarked, so something like this, they will isolate, so you can't use the cell that I just marked with a big dot. So get this, get stuff like this. These three cells have to form a tetromino, so it's got to shade the one immediately below it. These two are part of a tetromino. They must connect to this cell. It can't come like this or it forms a 2 by 2 square. The cell has to connect as a tetromino somewhere, so it comes to the left. 2 by 2 square shading lets us cancel that piece. We can do a little more now with the 5-2 clue. To get a 2 shaded, it's got to use this cell here. Now we can do some counterfactual thinking. If this cell here is, first I guess we can show that this has to be shaded, so we get 1, 2, at least 3 cells. Notice that this can't come across, it would form a tetromino if those connect, so this has to come down at least 1. It's right near to an eye, so it can't extend this way, it has to come over like this. Now, I think to finish the puzzle, there are a few different kinds of ways to go. The way I went, I think, was to just explore the LITS shapes around this. And one thing to recognize is if I shade this lowermost cell, it's going to finish out this group, so the tetromino that's formed with it will always come down. And I see that I get an S with an S if I use this first cell. So this doesn't get used. If I shade this cell, I'm going to get a T with a T. So this cell doesn't get used. Now, I actually don't know if this comes up or down, but I know these are part of a tetromino. If this cell is not used, if it comes up here and forms this shape S, this one here forms another T next to a T. And so really, just by thinking about shading of clues down here, I can say this cell isn't used, this cell isn't used, but this cell here is used. And that forms this L. This has to take at least these 3 cells. If it does not take this cell, we're forced to form a T up top. Remember, this is a T right to the right, so that's a problem. So this cell can't be taken from above, it's got to be taken from below. Finish out this L. There's not enough space with these empty cells to have another tetromino. We're now left just in this lower right corner. The thing to note is we have to place one more shaded cell in this row. Note that these two are part of a tetromino and they don't reach down to this row, so I actually have to shade 2 tetrominos, including this one. So I need to add 2 cells, I need to add 3 more cells with 1 left over. 2 with 3, I need to get 5 into the space. I need to avoid having a 2 by 2 square, so the only way those will shade, this is almost like a nano thinking step, it's like this. I now have to place the 1 remaining cell on the bottom. If it were here, it would be no good. If it were over here, it would form a T with a T, so it's down here and form an S. So, you know, this doesn't have to be as hard a puzzle as you might make it out to be, but it does really have a limited solving path, and it seemed the most critical step was seeing this connectivity in this lower left region, which forces us out this way, and then also forces us back through this channel as we solve out the different pieces of the puzzle. For those who are curious about the secret theme, the book code, the trick, or at least the thing to think about, is look at these as numbers and spell them out, and see, looking at these strings, if you can figure out how the word LITS is hidden within the puzzle. It was a different kind of theme from Bryce, but it was a really fun solve as a puzzle itself. Hope you learned a little bit about cross the streams, certainly a little bit about this variation. There's a slicey variation as well this week, which will solve the same kind of way. So see if you can combine, based on some of the steps here, constraints on the grid with shading, with fitting in pieces, and get good at this kind of combination hybrid. We'll see you again soon.